Hello, my name is Ash.
And I'm Callie.
And welcome to Paved with Gold, the Eating Disorder Recovery Podcast. I would like to acknowledge the traditional landowners on which Callie and I are recording and extend the same respect to the traditional custodians of the land from which you are all listening. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. It has been a hot minute since we last recorded. Of course, most people don't know that when they're listening to this because we aim to record a bunch of episodes, I think 5, and then we're going to release them all in one go. So when you're listening to this, you will have no idea. But it has been 6 months between records. It's been a while.
I actually can't believe it's actually been 6 months. I think it's been a lot has happened since then.
A lot has. I got married in that time.
Yeah, just a small thing.
Yes, which you know because you were there. Thank you for coming.
I was there. Oh, it was the best.
It was honestly so good to see you and also kind of meet you properly for the first time because I'd never met healthy Callie.
Yeah.
So that was so lovely to actually meet you properly and to meet Drew, which was so great. He's so lovely.
He goes all right. I can't believe it's the first time you met him. You've met him over the video, right? But never in person, which is just weird.
I know. I've only met him standing behind you and waving at the camera, which I don't think counts. No, it was so good to meet him. He's lovely. And also in that time, Blakey turned 1. So happy birthday, Blake.
She did. I know. How is she 1 already? It's ridiculous. I had a baby over a year ago. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, my math checks out on that one.
It's something you very much do not forget.
I'm sure.
Can confirm. But yeah, I can't believe she's 1. And to be honest, I hated the newborn days. So bring on 1. Like, she's the best at 1. So
she's very, very cute.
She's very cute. I'm creating my own little monster.
And I can say that objectively as well.
I know that when you say a baby is cute, they must be cute. Because that's not really something that is in your vocabulary for babies. So
no, it is not. I am very staunchly child-free, but I can acknowledge when a baby is cute. And yours, Blake, ticks that box.
She does. I'm creating my own little monster. It's both terrifying and the best thing ever.
Also in that time, since we've recorded, you started a new job. So please tell us about that.
Yeah. I have started my own business alongside my good friend Kat called Lotus ED Support. So we are a support service for eating disorders. We are both social workers. So I guess our business is grounded with social work roots, counselling roots, kind of coaching roots in a sense, but also a lot of casework. And our goal was basically to fill this gap that we saw of people slipping through the cracks of, unable to get proper support or access proper support. So we started Lotus ED Support to try and fix that. And it's been, 4 months now? No, 4 months. It's been 4 months now, and it's been a lot of work because we wanted to make sure that we were doing things right in a way that was very thoughtful of everybody who might access it and very thoughtful to make sure that it's accessible to most people. So yeah.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's been a lot of work. It's been very stressful and a lot of just Kat and I on phone call after phone call. But yeah, it's really exciting and I'm super, super happy with it and very proud of it.
Yeah, you should be.
Thank you.
So plug the Instagrams. Where can they find you? Give us all the apps.
So please come and follow us on Instagram at Lotus ED Support. If anybody is needing support with their eating disorder or disordered eating, please feel free to reach out to us there, or you can send an email, which you'll be able to find on our Instagram as well. Or you can jump on our website, which is just www.lotusedsupport.com.au.
All the links will be in the description below.
Yes, all of the links. There's so many. And you will be able to find us there and all of our information and kind of what we're about, what we're doing, and if you're needing help, how we can help you.
Great. Oh, I'm so proud. Just putting that on the ever-growing list of why you're amazing and why I love you.
Oh, stop it.
No, I shan't.
Stop it. You will.
Also, if you have listened to our previous episodes, you will also recognize the change in Callie's audio quality. You've got a nice fancy mic. Hello, radio voice.
Right. I got was very spoiled for Christmas. Just a very random little delivery at my door. And now I sound like a pro. Just like Ash.
This is an all grown up podcast now. We're big girls talking about our feelings.
Oh, yay.
So I could banter with you all day, but that's not why we're here. We have been through our stories and all of the introductory parts of the podcast that we wanted to talk about, but now we also wanted to get into the practical stuff, and which, let's be honest, is what this pod is all about.
Mm-hmm.
So in this episode, we're going to be giving our top 10 tips and strategies that can be helpful for eating disorder recovery. And these are a mix of our own personal tips based on our experiences, as well as some strategies that have been used in a mix of therapies that we feel are the most helpful. Of course, it goes without saying that not all of these are going to be relevant for you. Some may work, some may be less helpful, but at least we hope that it can be a starting point for you in your recovery.
Yeah.
For example, I have never been one for mindfulness or meditation, and I'm not going to tell you to do that. If it works for you, great. But I'm not going to tell you practice mindfulness and that's the sort of key to recovery, because it could be a factor, but not for me.
Oh, yeah. Look, for so many people, I feel like it's such a great tool. And I think of from my trauma kind of hat strategies in, like, if you have a toolbox for trauma, right? One of the really great ones is mindfulness and meditation, because it is like the quickest number one way you can bring your brain back to a state of just being level. However, for me, if I try, my brain's like, am I doing this right? Am I being mindful? Oh my God, Callie, stop thinking. Oh my God, no, you're thinking more. Is it even possible to stop thinking? This is ridiculous. Mindfulness sucks.
I just get anxious about the fact that I'm not meant to be thinking about stuff, and then I'm thinking about stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
You know, if it works for you, great.
Yes. So mindfulness is not on this list, spoilers, but shall we dive right into what is on our list?
Please do.
So the first tip that we have, which I don't think should come as any surprise, but is probably the most important one, is to seek professional help.
Yeah.
We have said it before and we will continue to say it, but get help as soon as possible. You can get help at any stage. It's ideally, the earlier the better. If you think that you have a troubled relationship with food, you're feeling not right in your body, you're feeling you have a dysfunctional relationship with your body, if you're not feeling right and you feel that behaviors and thoughts about food and exercise and poor body image are consuming the majority of your life and they're taking up so much space in your life that you feel that it is a problem and you're not having a greater quality of life, that is enough of a reason for you to seek professional help.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as sick enough. That blanket does not exist. And eating disorders take hold so quickly, and research on the treatment of eating disorders all shows that the early identification and application of treatment improves not only the speed of recovery and reduces symptoms, but it also reduces the likelihood of relapse. I'm not saying that you will never relapse because it's really common, but it does reduce the likelihood of it.
Yeah.
The longer that you leave your eating disorder to fester, the more ingrained your behaviors will become, and the stronger those feelings will be. But they are always treatable. But they do very rarely go away entirely on their own, and more often than not, they just strengthen over time. But having said that, regardless of the duration, those struggling with long-standing eating disorders can and do recover, as it is very evident if you listen to Callie's recovery story in the previous episode. How long would you say that you were sick for? Like 10 years, wasn't it?
16. Well, officially 16, but longer if you kind of throw it back to when, things sort of initially kicked off. So 16 officially, but much longer. Yeah.
But you still recovered.
Yeah.
And you are standing stronger than you've ever been. So it just goes to show that it is absolutely possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does getting professional help mean? I think it's quite important to sort of look at that. So usually it would start with talking to a general practitioner or a GP, who may then, depending on a variety of factors, refer you to either inpatient care or outpatient treatment, or just refer you to a range of specialists. And this could include a psychologist, psychiatrist, dietitian, a therapist, or a counselor. And a combination of these or just one of these really depends on your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, it's important that when you're looking for professional care, it helps to find people who specialize or at least familiar with eating disorders. Of course, this depends on what resources you have available, but it can help to look on databases such as Inside Out or the National Eating Disorder Collaboration for practitioners who specialize. Those links are all on our website, but you can also find them in the show notes. And for any practitioners out there who are listening, those links can also help direct you to resources that will help you become better versed in the treatment of eating disorders.
Yeah.
Because it is a specific practice and it has a specific protocol and set of rules, which I think is really important.
Yeah. I think on that note, it just made me think of, especially for general practitioners, right? Because I think there can be a bit of a gap there when it comes to GPs in not really having very solid knowledge on eating disorders. And I mean, why would they? Like, it's quite a specialized area, but I know that the Inside Out Institute, well, they've actually just won funding from the federal government for their GP hub, which is a really great resource for GPs if they want to learn more or become a little bit more specialized in eating disorders. It's basically just a bunch of resources for GPs to be able to get their hands on and know how to diagnose, treat, refer on for any patients that come through their door that they suspect might have an eating disorder. So that's really cool too.
That's awesome. Yeah, so check out their website for a whole range of things. They're so good.
Mm.
So, of course, it goes without saying that everything I just said is a very traditional course of help for people who fit that stereotypical mold of what an eating disorder looks like.
Yeah.
And not everybody will either have access to this type of treatment, have professionals listen to them, or even believe them, and as a result could be denied treatment. We absolutely acknowledge the existence of weight bias in eating disorders and the existence of accessibility issues when it comes to treatment and diagnosis. This could be distance or location based, it could be language based, there's a whole range of things. So we are aware of that these can and do affect people's access to treatment, especially for those who have eating disorders at higher weights.
Yeah.
Oftentimes their illnesses are missed.
Yeah.
Often eating disorders manifest after pretty much being prescribed diets or weight loss by doctors, and more often than not, they are simply not believed when they present symptoms. The clue's in the name, right? Atypical anorexia. You could have every other symptom for anorexia nervosa except the BMI, which is trash. And it's just...
It's mind-blowing. Like, why do you need a separate diagnosis? You don't.
Yeah. And this is, of course, something we want to do an entire episode on and invite guests who have lived experience in this field to talk about it, because we do not have that.
No.
We can talk to some sort of limits to access, but we have no idea what it's like to have an eating disorder in a marginalized body.
Yeah.
So we're definitely going to aim to bring someone on to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because it's super important and it is so rife in the world that we live in.
The thing that always strikes me when we talk about this topic is the fact that an eating disorder for you or I is just a diet to those in larger or fat bodies. And I think that speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm. In preparation for this episode, I was also listening to the eating disorders episode of Maintenance Phase, an extremely good episode that talks specifically about eating disorders for fat bodies. And they bring on an excellent researcher who really talks about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So go listen to that in the meantime, because it's very, very good. But we want to let you know that we hear you, and the standard of care definitely needs to do a lot better at catching the people who live with eating disorders in marginalized bodies, as well as those who don't fit into a typical treatment style. But more on this in a later episode.
Can I jump in, actually? I don't mean to plug the Inside Out Institute and their services. However, they've just won more funding for another service that I believe would be really great for those who are struggling to be taken seriously in their eating disorders. And it's their e-clinic, which you should also be able to find on their website. But their aim with the e-clinic is to fill the gap for those people who are struggling, to be taken seriously, and those who are experiencing weight stigma. They also really support those with binge eating disorder. That's another really great resource that they've got. And then if you're in Queensland, Eating Disorders Queensland have also just gotten funding for their service, which is called BITE. It stands for Brief Structured Eating Disorder Treatment Program. It uses like a combination of evidence-based interventions and support elements that will be delivered in a community setting, and you can also access it online, which is really great. And I believe it hasn't been released yet, but I believe the purpose of this is also to fill that gap of people who are struggling to access treatment and also people who are on very long waiting lists. So they're two more really cool things that people might be able to access if they're having those problems.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, links in the show notes.
Yeah.
So my final point when getting professional help is you should also consider getting treatment for co-occurring disorders such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, or trauma. While a lot of this treatment can only occur once you have been medically restored and once your brain is nourished, it can be helpful to treat your comorbidities simultaneously, this meaning treating 2 or more diseases in a person at one time. Often it is really helpful to understand where your eating disorder has come from and how you got here. And this dovetails very nicely into the next tip that we have for you.
It does. So, our next tip for you, number 2, is understanding your eating disorder's roots. We believe that insight into your eating disorder can be one of your greatest assets. If you can understand and figure out how and why your eating disorder has developed, you can start to treat it more effectively. From person to person, there really is just no one cause of an eating disorder. We know this. There is no clear-cut reason why no one person may have developed an eating disorder and another person hasn't. We could think of 2 people with the same, both people might have anxiety or be in the same set of circumstances. One might develop it, one might not. That is why eating disorders can sometimes just be so isolating. We both can probably attest to that, Ash.
Yeah. The one thing that I noticed when I was in the early stages before I started accessing treatment, I thought that I was the only person who was dealing with this.
Yeah.
I was all alone. No one would understand.
Yeah.
But as soon as I started talking to other people who have eating disorders, you realize that we're all so different and we all had so many different causes.
Yeah.
We all had so many different things going on in our lives.
Yeah.
And eating disorders just don't discriminate.
So I guess that leads into, there can be so many reasons why somebody can form an eating disorder. Many of those reasons are risk factors, right? So we're going to have a bit of a look at some risk factors that people may have that may be the underlying cause for them forming an eating disorder. So the first thing that we look at are biological factors. Of course, this is really hard to determine as eating disorders have such a physical impact that they have the ability to change a person's biology. But this also includes a genetic predisposition, hormones, which especially are pertinent to those undergoing hormone replacement therapy, brain circuitry, and gut bacteria, just to name a few. So one saying you've probably heard yourself, Ash, is, that the genetics load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. Have you heard that one before?
I haven't, but as soon as you said it, it's almost as if I had heard it a million times because it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a genetic predisposition to anorexia nervosa, actually.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you said. It was a loaded gun, and I was in that environment that just made absolute sense of why I ended up with an eating disorder.
Absolutely. I'm similar. I also have a genetic predisposition. And you look at the environment that I was in and it's like, no wonder.
Yeah. But it's also good once we know that we have that genetic predisposition for you, especially as a mum raising Blake.
Absolutely.
Now being aware of that. So genetics doesn't necessarily mean that you're bound to develop one. It just means that you should be more hyper aware of the kind of words that you use around her, the influence of diet culture, and you'll be on the lookout for those signs, which is so important to understanding that genetic predisposition.
Exactly right. And I mean, I think everybody should be super aware of those things. However, I'm definitely so mindful that, Blake will have a genetic disposition. So I am even more fiercely battling that, making sure that she's safe. And I think it's really great with my, past that I will be able to identify, hopefully.
Absolutely.
And put a stop to it straight away. But yeah. So secondly, there are also psychological factors, which are more often than not the most common. So this can include comorbidities such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, substance abuse, or personality disorders. But then there are other personality characteristics that can also contribute to your illness. These are things like perfectionism, people who are people pleasers, high achievers, or more sensitive individuals. And it's really good to look into whether you have difficulty regulating or expressing your emotions, feel a general lack of control, have low self-esteem, self-worth, or feeling inadequacy, or if you are highly self-critical, which I feel like it was just a tick, 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 tick for me reading that, like thinking of all of those things.
Yeah, same. Absolutely the same.
Yeah, very, very commonly that is the case for a lot of people with eating disorders.
It's again one of those things, just looking at these
Mm.
factors. And then a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of what that deals with is these sort of personality traits in people.
Yeah.
And also just these general feelings, which can absolutely be worked on and is actually quite essential in disorder recovery.
It's a very bloody difficult life if you try and keep up a life of having to please everyone.
Even outside of an eating disorder,
Oh my God, yeah. Like you think of people who may not have an eating disorder and they're people pleasers, high achievers,
It makes for a much better life if you work on all of these things holistically as well as in conjunction with your eating disorder.
Exactly right. So, thirdly, you should also look at interpersonal factors. This is all about your relationship with others, right? It's really good and helpful to examine your family relationships, family styles, romantic relationships, emotionally and sexually, as well as your social relationships. Identity can play a huge factor in your roots to your eating disorder, which is very common among many people part of the LGBTQIA+ community. Bullying or abuse, traumatic life events, or major life changes can also trigger unhelpful behaviors as a means of coping or seeking control. So that is also very much worth looking into and examining or exploring. All right, so finally, there are sociological and cultural factors. It is no secret how we feel about diet culture, fat phobia, and the external pressures facing us all.
No secret at all.
Not really, I don't think. Anyway, we live in a very toxic culture when it comes to food and body, and especially for those who lived in marginalized bodies. Hell yeah. Eating disorders often manifest from people prescribing weight loss to people. And this can be one of the hardest things to examine and come to terms with because you are relying on your mind to change as opposed to society to change. And those external pressures probably won't change as quickly as you will. It is slowly changing, but not nearly fast enough. And I think of, my fat friends who are recovering or have recovered into their body and the crap that they get. I think of people online, some of my friends that are online have an online presence. And oh my gosh, like you see the comments that is like made to them for just existing.
It's horrific. It's so gross.
Like
you're already battling those thoughts in your own head. And if they have managed to find ways to drown that out in their own heads, only for it to be fed to you constantly, it must be exhausting.
And it's abuse.
It is abuse.
But yeah, so there we go.
So the third tip is plan. The last plan being in capital letters.
Plan!
I hate using cliches, but I will in this case because I think it's valid. And a failure to plan is a plan to fail.
That was cliche.
It is super cliche, but cliches exist for a reason.
Yeah.
Recovery is going to be hard. It's It's going to be really hard. So it helps to be prepared for it before you tackle it in order for you to give it your absolute best shot. One of the biggest things is you'll need to establish a routine, not just throughout your recovery, but especially when you first start treatment. And it can help to do this if you're lucky enough to get inpatient treatment right before discharge. It's good to work with this with your treatment team and be able to sit down and develop a plan together. This is not just a meal plan, although they are absolutely critical, and we will do a whole episode very soon on the importance of dietetics. You need to plan not just for food, but you need to plan your appointments. You need to plan activities such as meeting up with friends, seeing family, if that's safe for you to do, of course. You need to plan times for self-care. You need to plan time for rest. Rest is so important, and it may seem at times that recovery is your full-time job, and it kind of is. And it kind of needs to be. And I know that's so easy to say it's so easy to say, but in practice, it can be so much harder when you have a full-time job, you're a full-time parent, you're a full-time carer, something. Yeah. But you really do need to put yourself first, because if you don't, and you don't take time to rest, you will burn out and risk relapse if you don't plan time to rest and be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
If you don't plan, you're also risking the chance for your eating disorder to creep in and sabotage your progress, which it absolutely will try and do.
Yeah.
Eating disorders are all about control. So by establishing a plan, you are disrupting the control your eating disorder has on you. But by doing that, you're actually taking control back, which I think is such a powerful way to look at it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, eating disorders are all about control. We think that we have control when our eating disorder is, in control, when really it's your eating disorder in control and you are absolutely out of control.
Exactly. You need to kind of let go a little bit of control to get some back. Another important reason to have a plan is so that you have something you can rely on when you feel like you need to go into autopilot. So like we said, recovery is really hard, and some days are good, some days are bad, and at worst, sometimes you will literally just feel like you are just existing, and it is the most exhausting thing in the world. Having a plan in place will help keep you at least physically well for those days, even if you're mentally struggling, even if you just have to, okay, I've got to get up, I've got to eat, I've got to rest, then I've got to have a shower, then I've got to rest, then I can take a nap, then I've got to eat again, then I've got to do this, then I can go to bed, then whatever you need to do to get the day over with.
Yep.
That honestly, sometimes that is fine if that's all you can manage in a day.
Yep.
If all you can do is manage to eat the meals on your meal plan, that's a great day.
Yeah.
That's all you need. It's a win.
Huge win.
Lastly, while you have a plan for recovery, it's also good to have a plan for relapse, because it will happen. Sometimes more than a couple of times. Putting my hand up. It's happened to me.
Yeah.
The best thing is to know your warning signs, know your triggers, and know what is helpful in those situations. It's also helpful for other people to know what those triggers are so that they can look out for you.
Yeah.
Have backup plans, have contingencies for when things are slipping, and then also have emergency all stops when you feel like you're on a slippery slope back into your eating disorder. And having these plans will help prevent or at least minimize the impact of relapse, and can impact how long those relapses may last.
Yeah.
You will slip up, and the most important thing is how you pick yourself back up after that.
Exactly right.
All right, number 4, hit us, Cal.
So tip number 4, challenge discomfort, sit with discomfort, seek out discomfort. So we'll start with another cliche, but again, they're cliche for a reason. Change happens outside of your comfort zone. It's been said 1,000 times, but it is true. And this time it's a trick right out of the old CBT playbook. You need to learn to sit with feelings of discomfort, whether that be fullness, anxiety, fear, or disgust. You need to ride the wave of discomfort, and eventually that feeling will pass. Kind of like urge surfing, if you've heard of that before. This is where planning can come in handy. Know what you are going to do when you anticipate or even caught off guard in discomfort. Whether it is a mindfulness activity or seeking out support, knowing how to handle discomfort is going to get you through. So insert your plan in there. So because recovery is uncomfortable, like super uncomfortable, it's bloating, it's gas, it's self-loathing, it's none of your clothes fitting right, it's horrible comments, it's fatigue, it's just being like in general sick of it. You need to learn how to live in, challenge, and sit with all of that really gross feelings and discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
You do. Like, there's no part it's going to get worse before it gets better. It honestly will. And you unfortunately have to just sit on that wave and ride it out.
It's what I would always tell myself. It's not forever. It's just for now.
I use that saying so much with my current clients, Ash, and I always think of you when I say it. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope people can find it as helpful as I did.
It's honestly such a helpful saying. It's like, because it's honestly is true. It isn't forever. It is just for now. And it feels like it's forever. And it's, because in the moment, it's like it's all consuming and it's just everything. And it's just, I don't want to do this anymore. But it actually does get better. So it isn't forever.
Mm-hmm.
So when you feel ready and once you know how to deal with it, seeking out discomfort can also be a helpful progression. So this can be, a really helpful tool once you kind of feel like you're in a space of recovery of being, like kind of comfortable. Things are going pretty well, but there are like maybe fear foods or there's fearful situations or scenarios that you are kind of avoiding. Maybe seeking out of one of those scenarios or situations or fear foods in a safe way can be super helpful for your progression. And maybe you'll mess that little scenario up, but that's okay, because then you can reflect on it and maybe talk to the people around you about maybe why that was, didn't go as planned. So then you can plan again for the next time you try that scenario. Practice makes perfect. Kind of links back in with the plan. So particularly when it comes to eating disorders, exposure therapy becomes so important. You can't just avoid food, or you can't just avoid scenarios forever. It's just not possible. So you develop such a fear of food and what food will do to your body that you tend to turn to avoidance. And avoidance really does just fuel that fear.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it would be great if that wasn't the case, but that is an eating disorder 101. So what is exposure therapy? So the American Psychological Association defines exposure therapy as a psychological treatment that was developed to help people confront their fears. It involves being gradually exposed to things or situations that trigger their anxiety in order to overcome their fears. It often starts off in a controlled environment, which then gradually progresses based on incremental improvements. Repeating this therapy helps to make this scenario habitual, but more on repetition later. We'll get to that a little bit further down. But it's honestly that pretty much is recovery, right? Like, you think of it like a staircase, and each staircase is another little step in your recovery. And often it takes repeating, like it's another step of exposure in your recovery to, your eating disorder essentially. And you just have to repeat going up and down this bloody staircase like nonstop. It's really boring, and it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I say it so often to people, like, recovery is actually very boring. It's not exciting. It's not rainbows and butterflies. Honestly, like, it is super boring, and it's supposed to be. So, like, don't hang out for, a day of it being, oh my God, absolute excitement, because it's not coming. It's going to be boring and good.
Yeah. The good stuff comes later.
Exactly.
And it always comes later.
It does. It absolutely does.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of look at exposure therapy as one of the core ways we also treat anxiety, which is why it is so effective in treating eating disorders, right? We are fearful of something, we feel anxious about being around it, exposed to it, and what it might do to us. And more often than not, with eating disorders, that fear is food. So regularly setting yourself food challenges can help to break down that fear. So, challenging discomfort is hard, and often at times you will slip up and make mistakes. And what happens when you slip up? Well, Ash, you move into our fifth tip.
You do. When you slip up, you forgive yourself.
Woo!
Woo! You are going to make mistakes. You are going to slip up, but that is not only expected, but very common.
Yeah.
And when you make these mistakes, you need to learn to forgive yourself and not beat yourself up over it. As they say, there's no need to throw the baby out with the bathwater and ruin all the progress and trajectory over one slip up, no matter how big or how small.
Yeah.
Honestly, you can have just like the worst day and think, well, that's it. It's all done.
Yeah.
Throw it out.
Yeah.
I think we definitely see it with self-criticism and a lot in perfectionism. But also when it comes to poor self-worth and the idea that you have to be the perfect eating disorder patient, no, the perfect eating disorder patient makes mistakes.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Absolutely.
Everyone thinks that, I have to do recovery perfectly, otherwise you'll fail, and that's a direct reflection of you and your abilities.
There's no such thing. Doesn't exist.
No, that's not how recovery works. In fact, recovery isn't about making mistakes. It's how you pick yourself up afterwards.
Very often you're going to fall completely off that staircase.
And just get right back on it the next day.
Yep.
Yeah, it can just be helpful just to take things day by day. And if you have a bad day, leave it in the past, go to bed, start the day fresh and new. If it's another bad day, or it turns out to be a bad week or a bad month, just keep going and refer back to your plan to help you get out of that funk.
Yep.
Because it happens.
Yep.
Let it happen, but don't let it control what happens next.
Absolutely.
It can be so hard to hear and believe, but you don't actually have to be so hard on yourself all the time, despite what your eating disorder or even society tells you constantly.
Yep.
You are allowed to take a break. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed not to be perfect. Learning to forgive yourself can help prevent the slippery slope of relapse by not letting self-judgment or punishment just pile on and making you feel overwhelmed. And also this feeling of, well, I've learned it now, so what's the point? I'm just going to give up.
Yeah.
And there's always a way back to the light, and it comes with forgiveness. It really does. So just take the time, accept the fact that you are going to slip up.
Yeah.
And just forgive yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we look at stages of change, right? That is literally, in essence, the psychological theory of stages of change. You messing up and then getting back on. It's not just you that it's happening to. There's an actual psychological theory around it. So, get back on the horse. It's okay.
All right, Cals, number 6, hit us with the next one.
So, number 6, set boundaries. In recovery, it's important to take a look at what supports and what sustains you during the process. But on the other hand, it is also equally as important to identify aspects of your life, whether that be people, places, or situations that are potentially unsupportive, unhelpful, and toxic to your recovery. You cannot get healthy in the same environment that made you sick.
To quote the immortal words of one of Adam and my favorite wrestlers.
Of course.
Because we're pro wrestling freaks. CM Punk.
Good old CM Punk. Always comes out with the good ones.
I love that you have absolutely no context for this, which is great. It makes it even better. I was never going to get healthy staying in the same place that got me sick in the first place. And I think that was just, he has a lot of mic drop moments, but that was...
Drop your mic right now.
Drop the mic.
It's true, though. It's absolutely true. And I think, unfortunately for a lot of people, the scenario or the situation or the environment that they're in currently that is, possibly a breeding ground for their eating disorder, a lot of people, unfortunately, are stuck in those environments. And that is really, really difficult. And it can be, a long process to get out of those environments. And I guess I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. If that's you, I hope that you are able to exit those environments and that you have people around you that you might be able to reach out to. Yeah, CM Punk. Nailed it. That's a good quote though. So recovery is all about moving forward, and you cannot do that if you stay around people that are holding you back, which again can be harder said than done. That is something that you can work towards, or have somebody that you can have with you to help you work towards that. It's going to be key. So what are boundaries? The Acute Center for Eating Disorders and Severe Malnutrition at Denver Health defines boundaries as limits and rules we set for ourselves within relationships. They are the invisible line that separates us from one another and outline what behaviors are considered appropriate or inappropriate in any given circumstances or setting. Some examples are setting boundaries of people who say unhelpful comments about your body. Yeah, we hate those people. Distancing yourself from people who don't respect or even undermine your recovery journey. Avoiding going to certain places with certain people because they may trigger you. Asking not to be weighed in a doctor's office or by anyone. Limiting the amount of time you spend at particular places or areas, or having an action plan at a family dinner table if somebody says something very unhelpful. That is such a good tool to have. Not all boundaries necessarily mean going no contact and cutting people out of your life. It could be having frank and open conversations with people saying, this is not helpful, please stop. And if you continue this behavior, we won't be able to have the same relationship as we used to. It could also be, I don't really feel comfortable talking about that. Can we please say change the subject? It can be very hard and it requires you to assert yourself and put yourself first. But setting boundaries with yourself and with others is so important to see progress. So if I think of a boundary that perhaps I've set with somebody, I'm going to throw it back to my recovery days perhaps. If I think of a boundary, so I'll use the Christmas table kind of scenario, I suppose. I think of Christmas time, like super stressful, can be super stressful for somebody with an eating disorder. You know, relatives, food, all of the fun.
It's all around food and it's all around family.
It's just a whole thing.
It's a hot mess.
Honestly, I think I throw myself back to those times, and I always had a safe person that I had, because I didn't feel like I was always able to speak up. And so I always had a safe person that could speak up for me. So if somebody said something unhelpful, or if somebody, you know, was looking at my plate and commenting on my food, that person would be able to step in. Failing that, a boundary that I set for myself was just removing myself from the situation entirely. So there would be some Christmases where I would actually just go home.
Good.
I would just leave because it was too much for me.
Good.
And that's okay. And I had the people that, you know, it was important to let know why I'm leaving. They knew why I was leaving. So I had already explained that. I explained that previous to Christmas time. But if, you know, I was in a scenario of, nah, I can't do this anymore, catches.
Yeah. You can also just have a time limit as well. Just saying, cool, I'm going to be here for 3 hours and then I'm going to go home.
Yeah,
then
100%.
You set that boundary with yourself.
100%.
So you're going to enjoy it while you've got those 3 hours and then go home.
Yep.
That's fine.
Exactly right. It may even look like I've had, you know, some scenarios where I've just gone and had a shower and then re-entered. You know, whatever it is.
Just taking that time for yourself.
Yeah. So important. So that was always, and it's actually a boundary I kind of still have because, you know, I get overwhelmed. I have ADHD. So, you know, I have sensory overload. And if something is too much, I'll go have a shower, or I'll like nudge Drew and be like, we need to leave. And he's usually more than happy to leave because he's an introvert. So he'd be like, yeah, let's go. But it's such a helpful tool to have. So Ash, what about you? Do you have sort of a scenario or an example of a time where you've set a really good boundary?
Yeah. Honestly, even like as a blanket rule now, I shut down any talk of dieting or nutrition advice or any talk of diets.
Good.
During my recovery, and I continued it till now because I don't really want to hear about it.
It's boring.
It's boring, and it can also really trigger me.
Yeah.
But if it's with people I'm close to, I will say something along the lines of, we're all intelligent people here. I think we can talk about something more interesting than this. Or even simply,
Perfect.
Enough of the diet talk, please. I don't really want to continue this discussion.
Perfect.
So that's if I'm around family or friends. But if I'm in a space where I don't know people all that well, or I'm in, say, a work environment, for example, I'll just either take myself away or put my headphones on, or just try and zone out by looking around and seeing if there's something I can distract myself with. Like, I'm going to count the number of bricks in the wall, or something really frivolous like that. Or I'm going to, you know, if I'm out or something and people are just yarning on, like, all right, I'm going to look for all, you know, cars that are all the different colors of the rainbow. So there's a red one. Okay, now there's a blue one. All right, now where's a green one? Wait for a green one to come past.
Amazing.
Just think like tiny little things like that, just that I can occupy my brain, which is more important and valuable to me than diet culture anyway. I find that way more entertaining.
I mean, that's what just made me laugh, was just like counting bricks is so much more entertaining than bloody diet culture. But also that's a really good grounding technique, Ash.
Yeah, I definitely respond way better to acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT.
Yeah.
That's way more my jam. That fits into more of how my brain works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing grounding technique. It's actually also a DBT skill. I'm a big DBT nerd, so
See, find the therapy and make it work for you.
Absolutely. There's so many. If one doesn't work, find the other. But yeah, it's such a good tool. That's awesome. Yay, we love counting bricks instead of that. And it's actually it reminds me of, to be honest, it's a very hard and fast rule I have in my house with my daughter. You do not
Mm-hmm.
talk about bodies or diet culture or food in any such way around my daughter.
Yeah.
Do not, or I will fight you.
Yeah. You actually posted a really good thing on Instagram the other day, which
Mm,
was about if your child has been diagnosed with
mm,
an eating disorder and you are dieting,
stop.
stop dieting.
Yep.
I saw that and I was just,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you just feel like you're competing the whole time.
Did you know that we have research that suggests that 2-year-olds are able, yeah, 2-year-olds are able to take on feelings, thoughts and feelings about bodies and food? And where do they learn that at 2 years old?
Shut the front door. Oh, I hate it. I hate
Right?
it. I hate it.
2-year-olds. So,
You would never wish that upon a 2-year-old in your life.
yeah,
So, I mean, first of all, you shouldn't wish it upon yourself. But,
yeah, yeah.
oh my goodness, that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So get it out of the home.
Mhm.
What, and I think that's it's something that we see a lot in private practice as well is, parents with diet culture within the home. How do we get rid of it? Because it's going to impact your little ones. They are listening, they are watching you, they are learning from you. And if you are engaging in diet culture in any such way,
Yes.
it's impacting them.
Yeah, you're laying the groundwork. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and if people keep doing that, set a boundary.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I throw them out. There's none of that in my house. I will
Good.
fight you. I'm small, but I will fight.
All right, let's move. Let's go on to number 7, which is establishing and, more importantly, utilizing a support network.
Mm,
So we mentioned at the start of this episode when talking about seeking professional support, it's important to touch on how this professional help continues in your recovery, which they are the ones who are going to be guiding your recovery, laying the groundwork, working with you, and setting up those plans.
yeah.
There is also a great comfort in knowing that you're not alone on this journey. And a lot of times this can come from your treatment team and your support network. You need to establish a medical support network and a treatment team, which includes a lot of practitioners that we mentioned earlier. And where possible, it's great if those people have lived experience.
Mm,
Having people with professional experience or lived experience just removes that extra barrier that I think can come with accessing support.
yeah.
But of course, your treatment team is not where your support network starts and stops. A support network is all about surrounding yourself with helpful people who have committed to you and that you can rely on to help you through your recovery process. The key's in the name, right? Support.
Yeah.
Only include those people who you can trust to help you, hold you accountable, and also be available when you need them, which is why it's also good to have multiple people and multiple people who will serve different purposes and can play different roles. So some person may be great for tough love. If I need someone to snap me out of it, I'm going to go to this person.
Mm,
If they have someone who's really empathetic and you just need a good cry and someone to just listen to you, go to that person. It's good to diversify your support portfolio, if you will.
absolutely.
Some examples could be also getting into some kind of group therapy where it can be helpful to share with people who are going through similar experiences as you. Of course, when you set boundaries with people, it's often in times to put your health first in some of these relationships. And if some of your support network is no longer becoming helpful because they don't have that level of understanding that comes with having lived through an eating disorder, then the power of lived experience and shared turmoil can really be beneficial in a group setting,
Yeah.
which I think is why group therapy is often used quite a lot in inpatient and outpatient treatment.
Yeah, I think with that as well, Ash, of people, if they become unhelpful, I think, and maybe we are a good example of this as well,
Mm-hmm.
as somebody's recovery does continue on, perhaps those that you have, seeked refuge with or shared experiences with along that way who might also be unwell with an eating disorder. Perhaps, at some stage you may need to have a really good look and see, are they still a helpful friend?
Yeah.
Yes, I love them, but are they helpful to me? yes or no, maybe no. And, sometimes you do have to leave those people behind. So,
Yeah, it comes at are people recovering at the same rate as you?
exactly right.
Because then your paths on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
Because if someone's a little bit further behind because they just have a bit more challenges in their recovery,
Yeah.
it's okay to say, I'll see you when you get to where I am.
Exactly right.
It's setting a boundary,
Yeah, exactly right.
All of these tips are all linked together, which I think is really important to look at this holistically.
Yeah.
Like I said, when discussing recovery plans, make sure you establish and know your support network and the roles that they play and when to call on them.
Yeah.
Use this support when and as often as you need it because they're there to help you. And they want you to succeed too. They will be there in the dark times. And more importantly, they will share in your successes, which I think is everyone wants you to get better. That's why they're part of your team.
Definitely.
All right, Kels, number 8, bring us home.
So number 8, separate yourself from the eating disorder. We both have found this one particularly helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we both gave our eating disorder a name to help us separate what thoughts were ours and what were from our eating disorders, which can be really helpful in reclaiming and finding your voice and identity again.
Mine was called Ed. It was so original.
Wow. Mine was Mavis.
I know. I loved your
the
name.
Grumpy little old lady. It's interesting, actually. There's been a lot of discourse around this lately of people being like, oh, that's so unhelpful because it's making eating disorders sound so cute and has a personality. And
nah, Ed was a dickhead.
Honestly, I find it helpful. I found it helpful. Like everything, if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But for many people, I think this really does help. And of course, with everything, there's nuance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So eating disorders, as we know, take up so much of our lives and can be all-consuming that it can actually sometimes be really hard to distinguish between what is you and what is the illness. By doing this, by separating your eating disorder from yourself, you are constantly reminding yourself that it is your eating disorder that is the problem, not you as a person living with the eating disorder. You are not your eating disorder.
You honestly sometimes just feel like you're such a burden and why am I like this? It's like, no, it's not you.
Yeah.
It's your eating disorder that's the problem.
And it's so understandable that you can sometimes feel like we're one of the same because it may consume every part of your life. But I think if you really sit down and a really good tool and activity that I found really helpful, and you probably did it as well, Ash, is what are my eating disorder morals? And what are my morals? What are my eating disorder values? And what are my values? Because if they're very likely very separate because I don't like lying. It's not one of my values. I hate lying, but my eating disorder loved it. Really very easily allows you to see how separate it is to you as a human. You are a human, not an eating disorder.
Exactly.
And this kind of leads into my next point of eating disorders can make you lie. It makes you keep secrets, break promises, and seemingly turn you into someone that is so unlike yourself. This isn't about absconding yourself of responsibility, but more about helping remove feelings of blame, guilt, and shame that may occur when you make mistakes or, engage in eating disorder behaviors. By separating the two, it's reminding you that your eating disorder is not a part of you. It is not your personality. It is an illness that needs to be treated. By saying, I am not my eating disorder, you and your treatment team are able to look at the problem at hand, develop a greater understanding of your illness and its intricacies. So with that, we'll wrap this one up with a very great quote that a good friend of mine, Nick McDermott, put up on Instagram very recently. And as soon as I saw it, I was just like, oh my God, yes. So
I saw it too. So good.
How good is it? So your eating disorder doesn't pay rent to live inside your head. So it is perfectly damn reasonable to issue a few eviction notices.
Another mic drop moment.
Boom, right? Especially I feel like in the current climate that we're in.
Absolutely.
Pay me some rent, mate. It's expensive. That was a good one, Nick. I love that one. So number 9.
It's my last one, so let's make it a good one. Number 9 is repetition. This one is, again, straight out of the CPT playbook. As we've already said,
We've referenced it twice now. People are going to be like, are you sure about that?
It's like, oh, she's saying a lot. No, I never really responded well to CPT when it came to my anxiety. But when it came to my eating disorder, the repetition was the golden rule that I swore by. when it came to my eating disorder, I was very practical. I wanted to look at the science. Like, give me the science, give me the facts. I need comfort in knowing how things work. I had spent my entire life being creative as I work in advertising, I'm a creative, an art director, all that stuff. So I live in the space of, oh, how do you feel? And what is, what do you think? And subjectivity. There's no like right or wrong answers. But when it comes to facts, there's great comfort in that.
Mm.
So repetition for me, when I found this, it was just, it clicked.
Yeah.
Repetition helps the brain change. It's true of any skill, right? You never just picked up a pen and started to write. You never just hopped on a bike and started riding. And I can say that having just learned how to ride a bike recently on my honeymoon. Shout out to my gorgeous husband who taught me how to do that.
It's amazing.
I know. You can still learn how to ride a bike at the age of 31. There is no shame in it.
Go figure.
I know.
You're not too old, ever.
I know. Never too old. But yeah, you never just hopped in a car and started driving. You never just had these skills. You had to practice them over and over and over again. And by repeating this, they became autonomous.
You could probably say the same thing about your eating disorder. You probably, when you started your eating disorder, it probably wasn't a full-blown eating disorder. It might have just been the one behavior, but then you continued with that and it continued in.
It creeps up on you.
Mm.
I've always said that unlearning stuff is a lot harder than learning stuff.
Yeah.
So you need to teach your brain how to learn new stuff to replace the bad stuff.
Mm.
So the more you repeat a specific behavior ever so slowly, that behavior will become more and more ingrained, and eventually more healthy behaviors will start to replace the unhealthy ones.
Yeah.
The same can be said with negative thoughts. When I first started CBT, the first thing they asked me to do was challenge negative thoughts that would come into my brain. So say a thought would come into my head as you're an absolute failure, you're a waste of space. I would then have to sometimes even say out loud, no, you're not a failure, you're not a waste of space, you're just having a tough time, you're valid, you're allowed to be here. Did I believe it? Absolutely not. Of course I didn't. But you have to start somewhere,
Can I just interject here? I'm pretty sure that's actually a DBT skill, not a CBT skill.
Is it?
Yeah.
That just changes everything.
Well, I was like, hang on a second. This is DBT, which is dialectal behavioral therapy. So dialectal, you've basically just said it, that thought's in my brain. And so I explained it as like, oh, well, that's a really interesting thought. Thank you for that thought. But actually, I'm going to do this instead. Or actually, I know this to be true instead. So yeah, it's actually a DBT skill.
Well, there you go. Shout out to DBT.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry, continue.
No. But yeah, I didn't honestly believe any of this stuff that I was saying at first. But I needed to repeat these statements constantly that challenged my rational thinking, even if I didn't believe them.
Mm.
But slowly, the more I kept doing it, the more natural it became, and the more I ended up distancing myself from that negativity. And sometimes when you first start, you're thinking, oh, there's no way that I'll ever be able to think like this. But you really end up changing because that's how your brain works.
Yeah.
It takes time and it takes persistence and it takes repetition.
Mm-hmm.
People don't change their thinking because they're asked to.
Mm.
They have to force themselves to do it. They have to reteach themselves and unlearn behaviors. You have to constantly expose yourself, hello exposure therapy, to things that you're fearful of over and over again to make them stick.
Mm.
And if you think that things will never change and it won't get better despite doing them over and over again, keep doing it. It means that you're not there yet because you will be, and it's not forever. It's just going to suck for now.
Love it. And it's classic neuroplasticity, right? I'm going to get a bit nerdy on you here, but
that's a big word. Tell me what it means.
Yeah. Well, exactly what you've just spoken about is neuroplasticity. So your brain is basically like Play-Doh. So if we think of neuroplasticity as Play-Doh, and that is your brain,
Mm-hmm.
it is remoldable. So if you had the one behavior that you've been doing for a long time, say your eating disorder, and you have say it's mud and you have a wheel going along that mud track over and over and over again, it's going to be a pretty deep mud track, right? Like wheel track.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you're going to have, maybe you have another car that wants to go a different way. And the first time you go down that different way on the mud track, the track is going to be not as deep as the first track.
Mm-hmm.
But the more times you go down that mud track, the deeper it's going to get. And likely the other track is probably maybe rain happens or, it starts to lessen because actually you're going down the other track frequently now. So that's your brain, right? So if you're doing the one behavior over and over again, you're forming neural pathways. And those neural pathways are going to be pretty deep in your brain. But If you start performing or doing another behavior, you're going to be forming other neural pathways. And you just need to keep doing the other things to form deeper neural pathways and lessen the first neural pathways. Neuroplasticity, your brain, ladies and gentlemen. Did that make sense?
My brain is Play-Doh. Got it.
Basically,
no, it did make sense.
Pre-moldable. You can form new neural pathways.
Love it.
Just keep practicing.
Repetition. It's all
repetition.
It's great.
I just made like exactly what you explained to sound so much more complicated, but essentially.
All right, Cal, bring us home for the last one. And I think one of the most important tips that we have out of all of them.
I agree. So number 10, dream. This is one that is very close to my heart, and I know it's probably very close to yours too, Ash. So yeah, you've got to find your why. Why should you recover? Why should you keep going? You need to learn to dream bigger than your eating disorder. You can find yourself so trapped and consumed by it every day that it can be hard to lose sight of the bigger picture. Go beyond your eating disorder, and even if it is hypothetical for now, just dream what else there could be. I remember doing this in form of a diary entry. I just wrote down on a piece of paper my wildest dreams of what I wanted my life to look like. I didn't necessarily believe that my life could look that way. I didn't write it down thinking that I was going to be able to achieve it. I just thought that would be really nice. Like that would be a cool life. Funnily enough, a lot of the things on my little list, I still have that list, I'm actually doing now, which is pretty cool. But
so good.
But the point is just write down whatever you can, because dreaming really is a helpful tool. If you have actively chosen recovery, then there was a reason you sought out recovery. And it's so important to keep reminding ourselves of the reason why you started and what is keeping you going. Even in those really dark times where you think that you can't keep going, I get it. I know it's so difficult. If there is a little bit of a why that somebody could remind you of, even if you tell somebody else what that why is and let them hold on to it, it's going to be helpful. So it could be that you want to start a family someday. You may want to get married or just be in a loving relationship. You just want to get your life back, which is a pretty good reason in and of itself. You want to have meaning relationships with your friends. You may have big career goals and aspirations that you want to achieve. You want to travel, learn languages, and fully immerse yourself in other cultures. You may want to do it for your family. You may not even know yet, but all you know is that you just want better for yourself. Or maybe you just got sick and tired of being sick and tired, which is so incredibly valid. Being sick is tiring.
Oh yeah.
It's not a way to live.
It's no real life.
Oh, it's just, yeah, it's really, really not. There are so many reasons to keep going and keep dreaming, and they are all absolutely possible, even if they don't feel like it right now. I truly believe they are possible, and you don't need to believe that they're possible at this time. If you just keep dreaming and thinking of those things, then it can be super helpful. So, like I said before, it can be super helpful to write these dreams and ambitions down. You could even start to plan to try and reach them. So maybe I want to start a new career. How am I going to start that career? What do I need to study, or what do I need to do to get this job? Planning. Throwback to our earlier tip. Planning. Helpful. So there will be times that you feel hope is lost and you just want to give up. There will be times when you feel all hope is lost, but it is always there, even if you aren't holding it yourself. You just have to remember why you started. There is always something deep down inside of you that is fighting to survive, because you and your body have made it this far, which is pretty cool. It honestly doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been unwell, how many times you have relapsed, how many times you've been denied or been unable to access treatment. It does not matter who you identify as. I do believe recovery is possible. We believe recovery is possible, however that looks for you.
We absolutely do.
Yeah. It's, such an individual thing, but however it looks for you, it is really, really possible. To what are you recovering? Really think about that. It's time to get excited about your life beyond your eating disorder. Again, even if you don't believe it to come true, if there's a little part of you that can perhaps be excited about what could be, because honestly, both Ash and I know that life really is better and more beautiful than you can ever imagine. It's not without its tribulations and, crap and stresses. And, you might have your comorbidities, to address after recovery, but all of that's pretty cool as well. I think to be able to do all of that without an eating disorder is much easier.
I got chills when you said that. And honestly, what a way to leave it on.
I agree. Do you know what? I thought of a story as I was saying that my GP actually, when I was very unwell at one point in my journey, yuck word. Always will have an issue with that word. But I remember her saying to me, Callie, what is your ikigai? Which is quite apt for the name of our podcast. But ikigai basically means what is the meaning of your life? The meaning of your life is not to suffer. The meaning of your life isn't to be treated, any such way. There is a meaning to your life. So what is it? And I thought, yeah, that's always stuck with me.
Oh, so good. Oh, I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat.
Kitty.
All right. Well, you know what? There you have it. Those are our top 10 tips for those recovering with an eating disorder. We hope that this was helpful for you and you found it relatable in some way. Of course, not all of these will apply to you. You may not find all of them helpful, but I think there should be something for everyone, or even just food for thought, if you will, pardon the expression.
Love it.
All right. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with, Cal, before I bring us in for the general housekeeping?
We've really covered it all. Yeah, like Ash said, there might be just little bits in there that maybe has resonated with you and other bits where you're like, oh, that's so not relevant to me, and that's okay. But I really do hope that something in there maybe has jumped out at you and, has given you a thought or an idea when it comes to your recovery.
Best case scenario, we've given you maybe something to reinvigorate you and spark that motivation again if you've maybe lost your way, or you just need a little bit of an extra boost, or just need another way in. Sometimes can be really helpful.
Exactly right.
All right, that's all for today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. Follow us on Instagram at pavedwithgoldpod. Send us a Gmail at pavedwithgoldpod@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter at pavedwithgoldau, or visit our website, pavedwithgoldpodcast.com. All of those links will be in the show notes along with extra resources. And until next time, stay safe and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is general in nature and has not taken your personal circumstances or medical history into account. We are here to share our own experiences and the things that we have found helpful throughout our own personal recovery journeys. Please remember that each person's journey and circumstances are different, and not all of the information contained in this podcast may be relatable to you. It's important you consult your own GP or recovery team to seek out tailored advice before making any important decisions relating to your own health and recovery process. If you have found any of the content in this episode distressing, please contact your care team or a medical professional. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs help now, please contact emergency services in your region immediately.